Good morning again, friends. It's my joy to share with you this morning on this topic of joy is inside, a very important topic for today because there's so much darkness around us, so many trials and tribulations, so many things that can bring our energy down, our thoughts down. And if we can realize that inside ourselves is perennial joy, that's like a river flowing all the time, then we can always take a dip in that river. And that's what today's topic is about. I'd like to start with just a very brief excerpt from Master's poem, Samadhi. Now, this was an actual experience of our guru, and then he wrote it down. And I want you all to keep in mind as I'm reading this, that this happened to Master Paramahansa Yoganandaji on a day when he was very restless in his meditation. And his guru, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, called him, and Master thought, well, he knows I'm meditating, I'm not going to go. And so he calls out again, Makunda. And he says, no, Master says, I'm not going to go because he knows I'm meditating. Then he calls him again, Makunda. And he said, Master, I'm meditating. And Swami Sri Yukteswarji had him come and he says, I know how you're meditating. And he struck him on the chest, and Master went, his energy lifted up completely, and he went into bliss, into samadhi. And it's talked about in detail in Autobiography of a Yogi. So I'll read this brief excerpt from that experience. An oceanic joy broke upon calm, endless shores of my soul. The Spirit of God, I realized, is exhaustless bliss. From joy I came, for joy I live. In sacred joy I melt. Ocean of mind, I drink all creation's waves. Four veils of solid liquid vapor light lift aright. Myself in everything enters the great myself. Gone forever, fitful, flickering shadows of mortal memory. Spotless is my mental sky, below, ahead, and high above. Eternity and I, one united ray. A tiny bubble of laughter. I am become the sea of mirth itself. What beautiful words, and what a beautiful experience that Master and all the great masters who've gone into that blissful state, they all went into that joy. They left this world, these thoughts, these pulls from the world from all sides, and they were able to uplift themselves, the energy in the spine, up to the spiritual eye and raise up to that seat of joy. And that's the goal. That's where we're headed. Everyone should know that's the direction. Even the direction it is, because as we go along on that path, there's joy all the way along. And I can say from decades of this path that what has been something that's been there all the time is God's joy. And what a beautiful thought to think that a poet lives in the thoughts of words. A musician lives in the vibration of sound and music. An artist lives in the vibration of color. And a yogi lives in the vibration of joy, of bliss, because it's within ourselves. As we came from joy, as that beautiful chant we have, from joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt. Again, and Gyanamata's beautiful words when she left her body, joy, joy, too much joy. And we have to keep this in mind. And this beautiful poem Master said to just blow on it. Any little puff of joy you have, to blow on it and expand it and make it bigger and bigger in your life on the path all the way to the end until you're just bursting with joy. And we look for that. We know that it's there from our teachings, Sat Chit Ananda, that we are ever expanding, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. And I remember Swami Kriyanandaji said to some of us near the end of his lifetime, he said, I'm mainly in bliss now. And this is the reality. This is where we are going in our path. Our teachings give this promise. But in the beginning, we seek the joy, we seek happiness in many different diversions. And we seek it in maybe a wonderful relationship, or we seek it in our children. We want them to give us joy. We seek it in a new car, or people put many things on their altar, and it's not God alone. Unfortunately, it should be. People want to find joy in a new house, or a new job, or money, or fame, or people know me, or good fortune. People are seeking joy in all these things. And I remember I did too. Before I found that magnificent book, Autobiography of a Yogi, I was seeking in all the wrong places. Like the story of the musk deer, that there's a wonderful fragrance that's in its own pouch. And he's looking, and sometimes will hurl himself off a cliff seeking that wonderful scent, and it's inside of himself. And so I remember when I was new, just before I came on the path, just out of university, it was Master's blessing, because I thought I had a job, a good job. I had good, everything, beautiful place to live, and friends and car and everything. And I just thought, gee, is this it? Is this all there is to life? There's just got to be something more. I was just 21 years old, and I thought, I can't go through the rest of my life with just this. And I began to seek. And then, thank God, I found a book. Master brought it to me, Autobiography of a Yogi. And I thought, this is the answer. This is what I must do. When I read that chapter on Kriya Yoga and finding joy within, finding God within, I knew this is what I had to do. And then someone told me about Swami Kriyanandaji. And I was living in Los Angeles at the time. And I remember I was heard about Swamiji, and I thought, I'm going to go up there to Ananda. And this was in the 70s, the late 70s. And in my community where I lived, nobody was doing these things. Nobody was interested in meditation. Kriya Yoga was like, these were foreign terms. Yoga even wasn't really happening so much. All the things that are normal and natural in India, nobody was doing those. But I said, I'm going to go up to that place, because people told me, this man, he's a yogi. He practices Kriya Yoga. He does what Yoganandaji said in that book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and he will train you. And I went, training? That's what I need. I don't know anything. So I remember I told my family I was going to Ananda, and they all broke down in tears, because I was the only person that went to a university. I had a good degree, I had a good job, and they thought I was the one who's going to save the family. So I said, no, I've got to go to Ananda. And I remember my mother's words. She said, what is Ananda? And I said, Mom, all I know is Ananda is a place where there's people who live, who practice joy. I don't know much about it. And my mother said, what does it even mean, Ananda? And I said, Mom, all I know is Ananda means joy. And I got in my car, my whole family was crying. I had my car filled up with all my possessions and I drove to Ananda. And I'll never forget that there was on the LA freeway, in one lane next to me, there was a line of funeral cars, black funeral cars. And I looked over there, and in my mind, it was like, I remember what Swami Sri Tesraji said, finding joy will be the funeral of all your sorrows, the end of all your sufferings and sorrows. And I went to Ananda and I thought, well, it's a place. Maybe that's just what it means. It's a place of joy. But what I found out, the joy was in myself. That what Ananda taught was like that symbol of Ananda, the joy symbol, which I'm sure most, if not all of you have seen, that joy is inside, and then you share it with everyone else. And what I discovered was it wasn't the place, it was inside myself. Of course, everyone was vibrating that joy and emanating and full of joy and light, but I was able to find that sacred key from someone who had it. Yoganandaji had it, he lived it, he experienced it, and he gave it to his disciples. And I was there with one of those disciples who had it and who was able to show it. And that was the greatest gift of my life, to know that joy isn't outside. It's in myself. Bliss is inside. And that is why on our path and our teachings that we talk so much about, the whole teaching is about go inside, cut the sense telephone wires. As Master said, they're always calling you outside. Reverse the direction of the searchlights of the senses. Turn those lights back inside. Awaken and open the chakras, and there will be bliss flowing inside of you. And this is also why we bless here at the point between the eyebrows, to the spiritual eye, the Kutastha Chaitanya, center of our consciousness, center of joy, center of our soul, awareness, because we want to remind ourselves, this is where the yogi lives. You don't live in the outer energy going outside. The yogi lives from in the upper chakras, and particularly as much as you can at the point between the eyebrows. So the discipleship blessing here and at the heart, of course, but the Kriya blessing is done here. The blessing in our ceremonies, for the most part, is done here. This is why people have this symbol here on their point, at the point between the eyebrows, to remind us this is the seat of our whole being. This is the seat of bliss in the whole body. And so our practices as well, they all lead us to that point. And I was remembering some beautiful stories of Master when he was with some of his various disciples. And there was one where one man, his name was Bob Raymer, and you may have heard the story of him. These were all very great souls. And he came to Master, and he had read his book, and he didn't know anything. These things happen from past lives that you do remember. I certainly remembered when I came to this. I said, I've got to follow this. And so he came to Master, and he says, I want to learn. And he knocks on the door. Master opens, says, how can I help you? He says, I want to learn this Kriya Yoga. He couldn't even pronounce it. And Master said, okay, come in. And so he was there, and Master had on his table, he had a photo album of his relatives, and he had some sweets there. And so the man, Bob Raymer, kept saying, yeah, I read this and I want to learn this. And Master said, okay. So Master kept showing him these pictures of his relatives, and oh, this is my brother, my sister, my other sister. And so the man kept saying, yeah, that's great, but I want to learn this Kriya Yoga. He could just think it was so sweet. Master had some sweets and he kept putting them in the man's mouth and just feeding him with his own hands and showing him the pictures. And what was he doing? He was preparing him. So finally, after a while, the man said, listen, this is all wonderful, but I just want to learn this. And Master said, okay, tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And the man was so happy. And now we don't give it that quickly, as you know. So the man came the next day and Master gave him Kriya Yoga. And he said, now go home. And he said, meditate tonight. And the Master informed him, just meditate, don't do other things. And the man was used to drinking 2 martinis every evening. So he said, I didn't do that because my guru told me just to practice Kriya. So he sits on his, I believe he was in a hotel, I'm not for sure, but he was sitting to meditate. And all of a sudden, energy just, he said, I hadn't done 1 or 2 or 3 of these practices of Kriya. And suddenly energy rose up my spine. And he said, I was just so full of bliss. He said, I began to laugh. I began to cry. I fell off the bed. I was laughing. I was crying. And I just said, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life. And this is what we've all been waiting for, but we've been looking in the wrong places. If we can remember to bring our energy within and up to the spiritual eye and to go through into the light, we begin to feel more and more bliss, more and more joy with each practice of our Kriyas. And how do we have more of that? How do we get more of that? Well, 1, in meditation, meet it halfway. Don't say someday, 40 years from now, whenever it will come, but to say, today, I am joy. I am feeling joy. I meet it halfway, not coming to your Kriya Yoga practice or your Hong Sa or Om or whatever and say, when will I feel joy? You have to come with that feeling. And I remember Swamiji told the story once of, he said at one point in his life, he was going through a big trial, major trial, one of the biggest in his life. And he said, he was just, his energy was down. He felt for months, he couldn't feel uplifted. And someone asked him to come and speak and sing at a function. And he thought, I just don't want to because I'm not in the right space. And so, but the person kept asking him, it was an Indian person, by the way. And you know how Indians are very convincing. And so Swamiji went and he spoke. This was before Ananda time. He spoke and he sang. And he said, people came up to me and they said, I felt so much joy. And he thought, how could they feel joy when I didn't feel joy? But he said, but actually, I did. Underneath everything, there was a river flowing, as always there, of joy. So even in meditation, if you're saying, oh, I don't feel, it's nothing there, it is there. And just know that it's there. Also, what else can you do? Ananda Yoga. Ananda is joy. We do yoga to uplift ourselves in the joy, in the bliss of God. It's not calisthenics, jumping here and there, pulling your leg over till you break your knee. You know, I see people, this isn't the joy of yoga. Yoga should be joyful. It's like meditation and movement. Why is it joyful? Because if you do it right, you feel joy. I don't know if everybody feels that, but if you do it properly, it opens all the channels and you just feel uplifted. So Ananda Yoga can help you to feel more joy. Singing, chanting, opening the heart, you feel more uplifted, you feel more joyful. Serving other people as best as you can. Now, there's a really wonderful humorous story of Swami Kriyanandaji when he was a young monk. And some of the monks, Master asked them to build a swimming pool for him. And Swamiji said he never used the pool. He was just trying to keep them busy and active. So one day when they were going to pour the cement, I believe it was, they had to dig and dig and dig and work hard. It was like 23 hours straight. And Swamiji said, we were chanting and we were just so happy to serve our guru. And everybody was happy except for there was one person. And that person worked for 1 or 2 hours and they said, I didn't come here to pour cement. And isn't it true? People think I didn't come to do the database, or I didn't come to call people on the phone or do the WhatsApp list, or whatever. I didn't come to set up the chairs. Well, what did you come for? If you do it with spirit, with joy, you feel the master's joy just filling you. Sometimes you feel like you can just lift up off the ground. You just feel so happy. And so this one man sat on the side, and Swamiji said after 23 hours with little breaks for snacks, they were so joyful, all except the one man sitting on the sidelines. He was still upset that he didn't come to pour cement. And so service also helps you because there's a flow of energy. You feel uplifted. And then finally, to also always keep in mind this poem that I read, affirm it. Master said, that's your reality, samadhi. Take that poem, read it every day, affirm that that's your reality, break out of the body. Like there was one man, this big, strong guy who was a disciple. Master used to say to him, come out of that body, come out of that body. Just saying, come into who and what you really are, which is that joy, ever new, ever expansive, ever existing, ever conscious, that we are that bubble of joy. And I'll close with this beautiful story of it. One of the disciples of a great master, it was, I believe it was Chaitanya. And the disciples were asking the master one day, when will I find God? And so he's told one, oh, you 2 lifetimes, you maybe 3 lifetimes. Oh, master, what about me? Maybe 5 lifetimes, maybe this lifetime for you. So his chief disciple came and said, master, well, what about me? And he said, oh my gosh, for you, it's going to be like 300 lifetimes. And all the other disciples and who were people gathered there, they gasped. They thought, wow, we thought he was deep. He's going to take longer than us. And this is how the mind goes, doesn't it? He's going to take longer than us. And so they, when the master told him this, he just went out on the porch and they thought, oh, he must be out there weeping because he's not going to find God for a long time. And they go out and the disciple, he's dancing in joy. And he's just dancing on the porch. And they said, brother, haven't you heard what the master said? It's going to take you 300 lifetimes to find God. And he said, brothers, did you not hear what he said? He said, I would find God. And he was just so happy that his master had promised him. And for each one of us, we have to be happy, joyful all the way through, that this is the promise of the master. As we take his teachings, we take his grace, we take the blessings, that we too, like that wonderful image of that disciple who would toss flower petals on the image of his guru, a picture or murti. And one day he was so blissful himself, he started tossing the flowers on his own head. And he said, what's in my master? It's in me too. And isn't that a beautiful thought to carry all the time? What's in my master? It's in me too. And I too will awaken one day in that joy. I want to read these last words from Swami Kriyanandaji to you. He says this from one Kriya Yoga ceremony. Through this practice, a particular practice of Kriya, you will feel joy in the chakras all through the day. So much joy once the chakras are awakened. Remember what Master said about Pranabananda in Autobiography of a Yogi. He got his retirement pension because of the overwhelming feeling of joy coming up from the base of his spine, rendering him incapable of doing his office work. This is what you will feel when the chakras become awakened. Joy and blessings to all of you.